Good evening, everybody. A strange thing happened, yeah. Actually, over December, in the period leading up to Christmas and even after Christmas, I was approached by a number of people who said to me, a strange thing happened. And a conversation would go like this. It said, I had a funny dream this week. And there's an incident that happened in the dream. And then 3 days later, it actually happened. I saw it happen. And they wanted to talk about this. Here's another example. Person says, I was driving down this road in, let's say, Island Bay. And I was looking for this place. And I ended up going down a street I've never been down before. And halfway down, I realized this is the wrong street. And so I need to turn around. And so I turned into this driveway so that I could turn in, back out, and then go back the other way. And as I turned into the driveway, they look up and they see this house right in front of them. And they say, I've seen this house before. I've never been down this street. I've seen this house before. I can right down to the letterbox, the front door, the gardens along the footpath. I've seen this house before. I said, what's all this about? And they obviously wanted to talk about this. And even this week myself, I had this strange dream. And I woke up in the morning, I'm thinking, that's strange. I've had a lot of experience at dream experiences and that sort of thing, but I sort of just put it aside. Something sort of registered in here, but I thought, this. And then it wasn't until a day or 2 days later I suddenly realized, actually, that was actually a really significant dream. I don't need to go over the details, but I suddenly realized, man, this is actually a really significant dream. And so I thought tonight I'd talk about this thing here called A Strange Thing Happened. Because, I'm going to turn this on first. Because when those people talked about that funny experience that they had, they were really asking some questions in the background. And, was it just an unusual coincidence or something significant? And here's another question they were really asking. Am I making too much of this? Because I know that a lot of them that shared that experience with me wouldn't share it with anybody else because they would think, if I share it with somebody else, they're just going to think I'm silly, right? But they want to know, do you think this is God? And if it was God, what's the meaning of it? All right? So here's the thing. Coincidence is God's middle name. God is the inventor of coincidences. And coincidences are happening all over the world every day across millions upon millions of people, even when you sleep. Right? And He made you for significance. That's why He causes coincidences to happen in your lives. Right? And my answer to those people when they came and told me about the story, straight away, yeah, that's God. This is God. He's trying to get your attention. And so, God is confirming a gift in you. What's the gift? It's obviously prophecy. If you dream of something, and then something happens in that dream, and then 3 days later, it happens, what's that? That's prophecy. And God has just told you, you've got it. You can have this gift. Now, I've seen this happen lots and lots of times, from people all around the world. I remember almost 20 years ago, I got an email from a lady. She was Romanian. And she told me almost exactly the same. It always has the same pattern. Said, I've had a series of dreams and things have happened. And then a few days later, or within a couple of weeks, those things happen. Does this mean anything? Of course it means something. So, pay attention to it. But what they're asking then, so what do I do about this? What should I do about this? And so here's the advice. How to respond to God when strange things happen. There's a principle. And here's the principle that I really want you to grasp. You respond rapidly. Right? You don't hesitate. If you require God to, send you a message and another message and another message and another message, and you won't do anything unless somebody comes up to you and tells you this, this, and this, and this, then He can do that. But if all it takes is just that one dream and you respond to God, then He will do things for you. Yeah, I tell you, He will. I've seen it happen. This is a biblical pattern. That's what I'm saying. That's why I know He will respond to you if you respond to Him. So how do you respond to Him? Well, you turn aside from what you're doing and say, God, I think this is you. I think this is you. And, I accept that you've given me something and I acknowledge it. What do I do now, God? Because here's the first step. And this model is in Jeremiah. It's a biblical model. This is how God started teaching many of His prophets in the Bible. So it's just a biblical model. And the first stage is this. God gets your attention, gives you a dream or whatever. There are lots of other ways He can do this too, And in that dream, He's revealed the gift to you. Now, I'm speaking on this occasion about prophecy, but it could be any other gift too. I can give you other examples of how He can confirm a gift like discernment, or a gift like word of knowledge, or a gift like healing. It's the same pattern. It's a biblical pattern, all right? He reveals to you that you've given the gift. You've got this, son. You've got this, my daughter, because I love you. So stage 2 is, once you accept that and acknowledge it with Him. So here's the thing, you have to accept it and acknowledge it with Him before you can go on to stage 2. And I say this because most people never go on to stage 2. They always get stuck in this thing. And then years later they think, I wonder if that thing meant something. Yes, it did. That was years ago. You've missed out on years of stage 2. Because stage 2 is God starts to train you in that gift. And that's part of the biblical model. You can read it in Jeremiah chapter 1. First, He gives Jeremiah a gift, and then He starts training him how to use it. That's a biblical model, and it's a model that's available to us today. Because I've seen it happen many, many, many times. But the other thing I've seen happen is that some people never get past stage 1. You can't get to stage 2 unless you complete stage 1. It's actually really simple. You just turn to God and say, I accept this is from you. I accept that you're speaking. I accept you've given me this. I accept that you're a generous God. I accept that you love me and I want more. All right? Okay. Power of testimony. I love listening to or reading people's testimonies. I love it. I read lots of books on people, people's lives and that sort of thing. And I love listening and reading about people's testimonies. And I like telling people my testimony too, because I know it has an impact on people. And there's another pattern which I've recognized, and this is a biblical pattern too. It's a biblical model. And it's reflected in that verse from Revelations. The testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. In other words, his life and teaching are the heart of prophecy. And this is the principle that I want you to grasp. Our stories of what Jesus has done in our lives give others hope and expectation. More than just hope, expectation that God can do the same in their lives. Right? And here's the thing that I've recognized over time, is that when you talk about what God has done, it creates something. Something happens in the room. Something happens inside people's lives. Right? So, here's a list of people. And these are some of the people that I've read about and understand their stories. Most of these people are actually dead now. There's only one, possibly two, that are still alive. Randy Clark is definitely still alive, and I'm not too sure about the guy next to him, Park Elias. If Park Elias is still alive, he's quite an elderly man now. But and I've only picked these ones out. There are hundreds and hundreds of more whose stories are written and recorded for our benefit, right? Now, I'll say something about these people. None of these people are perfect, right? So that's one of the things when you read some of these. I call these people, heroes of the faith. But these are people that have lived in the last 120 years. There are thousands more that have lived in previous centuries who have amazing stories to tell. There are thousands more that are living today whose stories are being told right now. None of them are perfect. All of them have their critics, and many of them have their enemies. Many of these people are hated. And here's the thing. All of them have been used powerfully by God. There's no doubt about that. But it doesn't mean to say that they they have good theology, because a lot of them have terrible theology. A lot of them, their theology is really wacky, or was really wacky. But God used them powerfully. So that, just remember that in the background when you hear about stories of people that are used powerfully by God. None is perfect. They haven't got everything together, but listen to what happens to them and what God does in their lives, and you'll be amazed. But here's the thing, that God called them. And before that, they might have been just ordinary people, and called out their significance and drew them to their purpose and set them on the path to their destiny and used them powerfully. So tonight I want to share the stories, or some of the stories, about just one of these people. And I talked about, what happens when you share testimonies. So as I share tonight, I have an expectation. It's a prophetic expectation that in telling these stories about just this one person, that something will happen, that it will start a reaction, and a spiritual reaction. There'll be a stirring in the spiritual realm, and because there are spiritual dynamics that are triggered by testimonies, and this is how it works. As I share these stories about this person, for some, it will plant a prophetic seed in your life. That will just happen. That's God. For some, it will just create a hunger, a yearning for more of God. For some, it will trigger and activate a spiritual gift that's been lying dormant and unused in your life. For some, you may receive a healing for a sickness, an illness that you've been suffering. For some, tonight when you sleep, you'll have a prophetic dream of significance. For some, at some point this week, over the next few days, you will step into a vision where God will reveal something important to you. For some, your faith will be lifted to another level. And for some, you'll simply turn to God, put your trust in Him, and give your life to Him. Those are all the expectations I have as we go into this time of testimony. So I'm going to pray first. All right? So let's pray. Lord, let the power of testimony speak. And as these stories are told, plant prophetic seeds. Create a hunger for you, for more. Activate a spiritual gift that's lying dormant and unused. Heal a sickness. Reveal a mystery through a prophetic dream. Provide a solution to a problem through a vision experience. Lift the level of faith in every heart in this room. And Lord, turn the non-believer to you. Amen. All right, let's start. So the person I want to talk about tonight is John Paul Jackson. I've read a lot about this guy and listened to a lot of his stuff, and because he was a dream expert, and so I had a lot of admiration for him, and he taught me a lot through his books and through just listening to him. But John Paul Jackson, here's a little bit of background on him. John Paul Jackson was born into a Christian family. In fact, he was a fifth generation Christian, which means his father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and great-great-grandfather were all Christians. And when John Paul was a child, he would know things. He didn't know how he would know things, but he would know things, and he would have funny dreams, and they would happen. And in fact, all of his friends and his family knew that there was something unusual about John Paul. He was a weird kid. In fact, his friends often used to play a game. They'd play, when he was just a child, they'd say, hey, let's play John Paul Jackson, tell us what we're thinking. How'd you like to have a friend like that? John Paul Jackson, tell us what you're thinking. All right. Now, when he grew up, John Paul Jackson wanted to be a businessman. But God had really called him to be a prophet because he had planted these things in him. These things that he just knew what to do in different situations. He knew, he knew about things because God had already planted this gift in him. But he wanted to be a businessman. And so he became a businessman, and he was actually very good at it. He was a successful executive. And so his success, to him, he interpreted that to mean that God's favor was on him, and therefore he was on the right path. And so he was meant to be a businessman and that he would be successful. But God was really calling him to be something else, a prophet. And he was resisting God. So, there's a lady called Ruth Ward Heflin. She was a U.S. citizen, but she lived for 25 years in Jerusalem, in Israel. And she was an unusual character. A lot of these characters are unusual. And big personality person. And you would know if she was in the room. You would know if she was in the building. You would know if she was in the city. So one day, an angel woke up Ruth Ward Heflin in Jerusalem and said, go to the airport in Tel Aviv. Now, it's Jerusalem, from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv, it's about a 40-minute drive. It's not far. Israel's only a small country. And catch a plane to the United States, in fact, to Dallas, Texas. And when you get there, I want you to go on Christian radio and talk about dreams and visions. Why? Because there's a young man there who's resisting the call of God. Right? And so Ruth Ward Heflin gets out of bed, gets dressed, drives to Tel Aviv, and is standing in line to get a ticket. She doesn't have any money. And she's standing in line, and this person comes up to her and says, this man comes up to her and says, are you going to the United States? She said, yes. Are you going to Dallas, Texas? She said, yes. Do you have a ticket? No. Do you have any money? No. He reaches into his pocket, he pulls out a roll of money, and he throws it at her. He says, here, take it. And then he turns around and stomps off. She's never seen him before. She never sees him again. She takes the money, unrolls it, and counts it up, and it's the exact amount she needs for a ticket to Dallas, Texas. She catches a flight to Dallas, Texas. She lands at the airport. It's a taxi to the radio station. I think it's KBBT. I don't know if it still exists today. She approaches the receptionist at the radio station and tells the exact story. This morning I was woken up in Jerusalem by an angel. It said, I need to come to the United States, to Dallas, Texas, go on radio and talk about dreams and visions. Because there's a young man here who's resisting God. So she talks to the program manager, who comes down and talks to her and tells him the exact same story. And he says to her, well, we've just had one of our people who leads a segment. It's a 2-hour segment from 10 a.m. to midday. It's gone on leave for 3 days. So you can have that slot. You can have that slot for 3 days, 2 hours each day, from 10 a.m. to midday. Great. So she goes on radio, and she starts talking about dreams and visions. And she says, the reason I'm here is because there's a young man here who's resisting God. And God told me to come here, to catch a plane to Dallas, Texas, and to come on Christian radio and to talk about dreams and visions. So this is what I'm doing. This is a ring-in program, so you can phone in if you have questions about dreams and visions. But I want this young man, I'm speaking to you, if you're listening, I want you to call in. All right? So John Paul happens to listen to this radio station while he's working at in his office where he's working in. And he's taken by the story. And she's talking about things that he's always understood. But he's somebody that's actually talking about them and explaining them. She's explaining things which he already knows. And so, he's excited because now he has the words and the language around what he already knows in here. Now he knows how to convey it up here. And more than that, he's touched by the story. And so he starts praying for this young man. He says, Lord, let this young man dial in. Let this man turn on his radio and listen to this lady. Lord, I pray for this young man. He needs to call in, Lord. He needs to call in. And so people start calling in. And so Ruth answers their questions, but she knows as soon as they start talking, this is not the person. And so the second day comes, and she's going through this in this 2-hour slot again. And John Paul Jackson is he's really worked up, and he's even crying. He's crying for this young man. He said, Lord, 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 let this man ring in. Speak to him, Lord. You can do anything. You can speak to anybody. Speak to this man. And so people keep on ringing in. And the third day comes. It's the final day. And by this time, he's really worked up. And he's sitting inside his office. He's got the radio going. And he's actually starting to argue with God now. And his secretary is standing outside outside his office. So he has to close the door so that it doesn't distract her. But she can still hear him. She can hear him arguing with God. She can't hear God speaking, but she can hear him arguing with God, because now he's into a full-on argument with God. And God says to him, son, ring in. And he's saying out loud, no, I don't need to ring in. And he's saying, why don't you call him? Just call him. He said, I don't need to call him. I don't need to call him. And he says, you have dreams. And he says, yes, but they're not dreams like these people who are ringing in have. It's not me. He says, you have real dreams. And he's going to this turn forward argument with God. Eventually he gets to the point and he says, all right. If this is you, God, I'll call in. But if I get put on hold, I'll hang up. I've got to go. I'm not standing waiting in any queue. I've got to go straight into the station, and the person has got to say, you're on live radio. And I'm not talking to anyone else. I've got to go straight through to this lady, to Ruth. If anything else happens, I'm going to hang up. And so he decides. He rings the number, and it dials away, and then he's just about to hang up. And a voice comes on and says, good morning, you're on live radio. And he is stunned. He starts stuttering, because he just didn't expect this would happen. And he says, he's going like this, and then he eventually blurts out, when I'm close to God, I know things, and things happen, and I can see them happen beforehand. But when I'm far from God, nothing happens. And Ruth Ward Heflin on live radio says, young man, what took you so long to call in? And he says to her, how do you know it's me? How do you know I'm the young man? He said, there have been lots of young men calling. How do you know it's me? And she said, the same spirit that woke me up this morning and told me to catch a plane to Dallas, Texas, and told me to go on Christian radio and talk about visions and dreams. That same Spirit is telling me now, you are the young man. He said, young man, why are you resisting God? Boom. It's all over. From that point, he began to accept that if God would do such an extravagant thing, to wake somebody up who lives in Jerusalem, send them to the airport without any money, catch a plane and be given the exact amount for the plane fare, come on radio station, be given a 3-day slot, 2 hours every day. It's absolutely clear for her. And then, he can't argue with that. Who can argue with that? All right? So, here's the thing I really want you to, if you're resisting God today, don't resist God. Don't resist God. Don't ignore those silly, funny things that are happening. Don't close your ears to them. Don't close your eyes to them. Don't close your mind to them. Don't close your heart to them. Because God has something for you. You want to hear another story about this guy? I'll tell you one more story, right? We can close it off here. I can tell you one more story. All right? This is a story about a miraculous healing. Now, there's some interesting background to this, and that's why I want to, if you're willing to stay with me for a little bit longer, tell you the story. Remember my expectation that I said before and what I prayed about. John Paul Jackson was asked by a guy called John Wimber to go on a speaking tour, to travel throughout Great Britain. That's to England, Scotland, Wales, and across Europe. To do a speaking tour and to talk about dreams, visions, prophecy, hearing God. Because his real gift, this guy's real gift, was the ability to hear God. He had it right from when he was a little kid. It took a person like Ruth Ward Heflin to put all of that, in context. But he had it. He just needed the confirmation that, son, you're meant to be a prophet. And what has taken you so long to call in? So John Wimber asked him to do this. Now, John Wimber was the head of the Vineyard movement. And John Wimber came to Auckland. And Gary took a group of people to see John Wimber. Yeah. Yeah, I'll talk about it, yeah. So, and the reason I mention it is that there was a group that went from here to listen to John Wimber, and John Wimber called Gary out. He had a word for him, and there's a word that was actually confirmed by someone else who didn't know the people from here, and who didn't know John Wimber. There's a person that was part of the audience, right? So there's a connection here to us, is my point. So John Wimber asked John Paul Jackson to go on the speaking tour. So John Paul Jackson agreed to do it. And as he flew out from the US to the first stop, which was, I think, going to be in Scotland, he picked up something which he said it felt like 24-hour flu. But he felt like, when you're a seasoned traveller, when you travel from one place to another, then you give yourself time to, have a good night's sleep. And he felt that after a good night's sleep and the catch-up of jet lag, that he'd be right after a few days. And so it was usually about 2 to 3 days in each place, a conference for 2 or 3 days, and he was the only speaker. So he had a full schedule. It was a very demanding schedule. So and he felt that things would work out. He got to Scotland, they got to the venue, and then things didn't get better, they actually got worse. It was more than a 24-hour flu. So he got from Scotland, he then went to, I think it was Wales, and then to England, and then to Switzerland. By the time he got to Switzerland, he was in bad shape. He was feeling very, very ill. His whole body had puffed up. His face had really, really puffed up. He said he had no neck because it was sort of just went straight down. His skin was very yellow. He was in pain over his body. And the skin of his ankles actually overlapped and hung over his shoes. So this is not a good shape to be in. And so this is day 21. And he was in a hotel, I think it was in Geneva, in Switzerland. And he woke up at 2 a.m. in the morning. He was feeling really crook. So he started calling out to God and pleading with God. He said, God, why have you let this happen to me? I've been obedient to you. I've been faithful to you. Why have you let this happen to me? I need you to heal me. I need you to heal me right now. If you don't heal me now, then I'm going to cancel the rest of the tour. First thing in the morning, I'm going to go to the hospital. You need to heal me. And he just finished saying this when he felt a presence in the room. And he sort of looked to the side and he sees this man standing there. Said he's a very old man, very small. He had white hair that was swept back, and his skin on his hands was all gnarled and it showed showed a life of hard labor. And he's looking at this person, and he thinks, God must have sent me an angel to heal me. And he said, so he said to God, so remember when he's in situations, no matter what situations, he talks aloud to God. That's a clue, right? That's a model for us. Talk aloud to God. God can read your thoughts, but it's not till you talk to him. Use your voice. Use your words. That is the key, right? It's the key to worship. It's the key to everything we do. It's the key to moving with God. You talk to him, right? And so he talks to God and he said, God, if you sent me an angel, then I want him to lay his hands on me and I want him to pray to heal me. And he looks at the man, and the man said, I've been sent here to pray to heal you. And so John Paul's lying there. He was actually lying on the floor and in great pain. And he had his hands over his stomach like this. And because that's where the greatest pain was. His whole body was in pain, but that's where the greatest pain was. So this man put his hands over John Paul's hands and started to pray for him, pray for healing. And John Paul described it as feeling like somebody was pumping warm honey inside him, warm liquid honey into his stomach. And then it started to spread slowly in both directions. It started to spread from his stomach downwards and then from his stomach upwards at the same time. So it started to spread like this. And it's like, he said, felt like a wave of honey, liquid honey, warm liquid honey spreading out inside his body. And everywhere that it spread, the pain disappeared. And so by the time it had reached the top of his head and the bottom of his toes, he knew he was healed because the swelling had gone and the pain had gone. And he was praising God, and and looking across at the man, and he was smiling at him, and as he was watching him, he just disappeared. And he said to God, God, thank you for sending an angel to heal me. Thank you for sending, your servant to heal me. And I can do the tour, complete the tour now. And he heard this voice that said, that wasn't an angel. Uh-oh. So he said, oh no, God, did you let a demon come and heal me? I've been healed by a demon. I'm finished. You know, what you let that happen for? And he heard the voice again that says, it wasn't a demon. And so he said, well, if it wasn't an angel and it wasn't a demon, then what was it? And at that moment, he stepped into a vision. And he stepped into this vision, and he was taken to this place, and he saw this hut. And as he came towards this hut, he saw the walls disappear. And he saw the man who had just been praying for him inside that hut, down on his knees, kneeling like this. And he had his hands out like this. And he heard him crying out to God. And he was saying, God, I don't have much longer to live. And when I die, I don't have any offering of my life to present to you. I don't have any story to tell. I don't have any testimony to speak of. I don't even know if you know whether I exist or not. I don't know whether you know whether I'm here in this village in Mexico. But please, if there's any way you could use me before I die, please let me be used by you. And as soon as John Paul heard those words, he then stepped back out of the vision, back into his room, his hotel room. And he realized what had happened. It wasn't an angel, it wasn't a demon, it was an actual person who was standing right beside him, who laid his hands on him, prayed for healing, created that amazing thing happen, and he was healed. Isn't that an amazing story? So remember, the reason the last thing was that God said to John Paul Jackson, said, when this man stands before you, everything that happens in your life from this point onwards, I will credit to him. I will credit to his story. His story now contains your story. Why? Because God can do anything. God can use anybody. So if you're sitting here tonight and thinking, can God use me? Or am I too old or too young? Or am I inexperienced? Don't know enough, I don't know the Bible, I don't know. God can use anybody. Right? God can use anybody. So I want to finish in prayer. I think I've gone way over. And I want you to remember this. When you talk to God, you talk to God. You don't try to read his mind, and don't expect him to read yours. He can, but don't expect him to do that. Communication happens when we talk to each other, not when we try to read each other's minds. Because when we try to read each other's minds, all sorts of things go wrong. right? Don't try and read God's mind. Talk to him. Talk to him. All right? Talk to him. Because he will talk to you. All right? If you don't talk to him, he'll be sending out funny little things to you, and eventually you will ignore those things. And those voices will get quiet. His voice will get quieter and quieter because you've talk to me, God. Talk to me, God. Right? But he has much to say about your life. So tonight, let's pray. Lord, I want to thank you that you give every one of us, and you have each of us, a story, a testimony to speak, just like you did for that old man in Mexico. But you gave him a story that will affect the eternal lives of many, many people. That one story from you is enough to change many, many people's lives. So tonight, Lord, plant prophetic seeds. Create a hunger for more of you. Activate a spiritual gift that is lying dormant and unused. Heal a sickness. Reveal a mystery through a prophetic dream. Provide a solution to a problem through a vision experience. Lift the level of faith in each heart. Turn the non-believer to you. In your name, Jesus. Amen. Thank you, everybody.